This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, phone scam. A Halifax woman with cognitive issues loses thousands to fraudsters.
The search for accessible housing. Nova Scotia realtors must now include accessibility information in their listings.
And from the ashes, residents in Clare vowed to rebuild the former Bangor Mill Museum after it was destroyed in a fire.
Scattered showers developing once again this afternoon, but more rain is on the way. I'll let you know what to expect and when coming up.
Good evening. A Halifax woman who lives with a cognitive impairment says she's angry after losing $5,200 last week. Someone called her pretending to be a bank employee.
Canadian fraud experts say it's a scam they believe is victimizing more people in this country than we know about. Josh Hoffman has tonight's top story.
Emma Mann and her mother are disheartened as they look at all the gift cards she was tricked into buying by scammers. Mann has Gorlin syndrome and had 2 brain tumors removed before she was 2. Last week, Mann got a call from someone pretending to work at her bank who said there were fraudulent charges on her account. She spent the next 6 hours buying thousands of dollars worth of gift cards because she says she was told that would fix the problem.
Angry, sad.
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed that can't pay my bills that I normally do.
Tracy Mann, Emma's mother, says her daughter prides herself on her independence, but now she's second-guessing herself.
Like they've taken her freedom away from her. She's used to doing what she wants, right? Getting on the bus and going shopping and doing fun things, and now they've emptied her bank account.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says the so-called bank investigator scam is one of the most lucrative fraud schemes in the country. Canadians lost more than $11 million last year from it.
This type of fraud typically starts off as an automated phone call or a robocall, advising the target or the victim that there's been a couple of fraudulent transactions on their bank account or credit card or even their Amazon account.
Horncastle says the people behind these scams know exactly what they're doing, and unfortunately, he's not surprised Emma Mann thought she was talking to a real bank employee.
For the most part, these they're professional criminals, right? So this is what they do as their job.
Overall, Horncastle says there were $570 million reported in fraud losses last year in Canada, but only 5 to 10% of scams are actually reported.
Just keep cautious of what numbers come on your phone next time. If it's scam, like if it's number you don't know, don't answer it.
Emma Mann hopes sharing her experience might protect others like her from losing money in the future. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Halifax.
A 26-year-old man has been charged in connection with a homicide earlier this year. Yesterday, police arrested and charged Daniel Romeo Downey with first-degree murder and attempt to commit murder. On March 14th, RCMP and Halifax police responded to a report of a shooting in North Preston. The victim, 18-year-old Diego Downey, later died in hospital. And during the investigation, officers identified a second victim who was an intended target of the shooting. He was not harmed.
Police say a man was stabbed after he tried to prevent a hit and run in Springhill. The collision took place in the 100 block of McGee Street just before 5 a.m. on Monday. RCMP say a vehicle ran into a parked car. A 50-year-old man who witnessed the incident tried to stop the suspects from leaving and was subsequently stabbed. He was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. A 31-year-old woman and a 22-year-old man, both from Springhill, initially managed to evade officers at the scene, but were eventually arrested. The man remains in custody and is facing numerous charges, including assault with a weapon. The woman was released and charged with failing to stop after an accident.
The owners of a Middle Sackville mobile home park with major water issues have pled guilty to breaking a Halifax bylaw. Westfall Court Limited runs Springfield Estates, which has been under a boil water advisory for the past 3 years. The city charged the owners for operating without a license and failing to provide safe drinking water. Westfall recently pled guilty and agreed to cut their tenants' rent in half for the next 4 months.
That was an idea that apparently came through our legal team, which I think is really a great idea, because otherwise, you know, any sentencing would have included a fine, and a fine will just go into general coffers here at HRM. What a great idea. Let's keep it in the pockets of the residents who've been the ones who've been suffering without the water for so long.
The park owners hope to have a new water system online by the end of August. They will keep delivering bottled water to residents until then.
Searching for a house to buy is challenging enough, but if you can't even get through the front door because it's too narrow for your wheelchair, that's a major frustration. Nova Scotia's realtors committed to fix that, and today launched changes to real estate listings, a first in the country, to break down barriers to house hunting. The CBC's Elizabeth Chu tells us how this all came about.
How do you find the entry point?
Oh, it's perfect. That's
Excellent.
a 10 out of 10.
Wow, what a view.
Yeah, it's a beautiful home.
When it comes to buying a house, there's a lot to consider. How's the view? Are there enough bedrooms? Is it close to schools and transit? But what about the space to turn in bathrooms and kitchens? And the size of hallways and doorways? There was no way for prospective buyers to know until Jerry Post came along.
I was looking for a house for my daughter, who was thinking about moving back from California. And she says, Dad, you know, I'd love to have you come over for a Sunday dinner and things like that, so it'd be nice for it to be accessible. So then we began searching for an accessible home, and it was impossible. You know, so we'd have to go and visit, and quite often the home was not accessible. So it was a waste of our time and the time of the agent.
So me trying to show people with disabilities homes has been a very difficult challenge. Oftentimes I'll find a home that I think is accessible or adaptable, and I'll show up to the house and we can't even get through the front door due to the size limitation of the door, or perhaps everything works great except for the hallway to the main bedroom is too small and we're unable to get in.
Fresh off his experience house hunting for his daughter, Post ended up in front of the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors. He was there to give a presentation about accessibility.
I suggested that, it would be nice if you could have an accessibility filter to search for homes. And they said, yeah, we're going to do it.
And 2 years later, here we are. We have great fields that are going to help a lot of people actually be able to search for homes that have had great difficulty in the past.
Nova Scotia Realtors are the first in the country to make this accessibility information mandatory on MLS, the multiple listing service.
We just added a few extra fields.
Kyle Clark says key details such as doorway and hallway widths, the turning radius in the kitchen and bathroom, they're all new. So is information about whether there's a barrier to get through the front door.
A lot of homes, if they have 3 or more steps, are very difficult to add a ramp to. Now, 3 or less, it's a very easy task to add a ramp. So we added that field so people can simply click, search, and say, okay, I can adapt this home, so I can move into this home. All right, so the door looks a little small. It is only 28 inches.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, that is tight.
So it looks really tight. Not sure if it has turning radius.
This bathroom is really too small. Of course, there's no turning radius. Like, how would I close the door, right? That'd be a bit of a challenge. I guess I could do it.
Door sizes are very important. So now we have the measurements, so we know, okay, well, the entry door is 32 inches or larger, so my mobility device can fit through.
This new listing tool is just rolling out. The plan is to add additional accessibility categories to help even more buyers find their home sweet home.
And I'm involved in this movement of making the problems accessible. It's, you know, it's like pushing a rock uphill. And in this case, you know, when I was pushing it, they started to help, and it's rolling downhill, and I'm trying to catch up, to keep up with them. So, it's an amazing initiative.
Elizabeth Chu, CBC News, East Lawrencetown.
All right, on this beautiful day, let's talk weather now. Tina is in for Ryan tonight.
Yes, there was a summer-like feel out there today.
Absolutely. Most of the temperatures, if you got away from the coast, we're winding up into the mid-20s. It's a little bit cooler along areas of the coast, courtesy of the southwesterly winds that have been picking up throughout the day today, and they're going to continue to do so ahead of a couple of areas of unsettled weather that will be heading our way, more so towards tomorrow evening and into Saturday. But it's okay. Father's Day, it looks like at least the later part of the weekend is going to clear up just in time. In the meantime, our temperatures are pretty warm. Most of the temperatures coming into the mid-20s, but it is cooler along areas of the coast, and there have been a few scattered showers popping up. Not as numerous as what we saw yesterday, but there's a few scattered showers working their way through the Annapolis Valley and through parts of the eastern mainland, and not too impressive right now. And now that the sun's starting to set, anything that formed this afternoon will quickly start diminishing into the evening hours. But it's this system off towards our north and west that will be heading our way. It's going to be a slow-moving system initially for Friday evening into Saturday, and then more moisture coming up courtesy of an area of low pressure that will be heading our way as well. And that will bring more widespread rain across the province. It looks like Saturday night, the better chances for rain into the early morning hours on Sunday morning, but just in time for Father's Day. Looks like things are going to clear out and cool down just slightly. We'll talk more about that weekend forecast, Father's Day forecast coming up just a little bit.
All right.
Thanks,
Sounding
Tina.
all right. Thanks so much, Tina.
Well, the Houston government's attempts to convince senators to hurry up their passage of a bill it wants turned into law as soon as possible hit a major speed bump today. Bill C-49 will open the door to offshore wind projects, something the province says could bring billions of dollars to the province. The Houston government sent a delegation to Ottawa today to make its case, but as Jean LaRoche tells us, it didn't go according to plan.
The Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables, Tory Rushton, headed that delegation. He wanted to show the Senate committee the province had the backing of communities who were eager for the jobs and the money that could flow to the province as a result of offshore wind projects. Rushton put special emphasis on representatives from Member 2 and Bodlatek who were in the room with him.
The Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia are strong leaders, supporters, and partners in our transition to clean energy. Just look at the number of projects where they are co-owners, from onshore wind and batteries to green hydrogen and more. Their voices are important, and we value our nation-to-nation relationship.
But one of the senators on the committee, Mary Jane McCallum, who is from the Cree Nation in Manitoba, questions the strength of that relationship. When she read a letter into the record she said the committee had received from the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs.
Given the significance and magnitude of this bill and its far-reaching consequences for the assessment of offshore renewable energy projects, we have serious concerns at the prospect of it being unduly rushed through committee deliberations at the Senate. So they were requesting additional time.
If that's a concern from the chiefs, then absolutely we need to have further conversations. But what I will say is I have had conversations with some chiefs since June 4th, I believe you said. I've had conversations with chiefs as of late this week. But that was never raised to myself. That's the first I'm hearing of that letter, to be very honest, today.
The minister clearly blindsided by this call by some chiefs to slow down passage of the bill, the exact opposite of what the province went to Ottawa looking for. Rushton had been hoping to introduce what's called mirror legislation at Province House this fall to complete the process. The committee says it's hoping to hear from the chiefs in September. So what's unclear now is when the province will be able to move ahead with its plans, because it's entirely dependent on when the federal bill becomes law. We contacted the chiefs today. They said they were unavailable. Rushton says what's at stake here are millions of dollars in investment this fiscal year. Jean LaRoche, CBC News, Halifax.
The Department of Fisheries and Oceans wants to develop a new system to better track the elvers caught along Nova Scotia and New Brunswick rivers. The fishery for the lucrative baby eels has been plagued by poaching in recent years as prices have skyrocketed due to demand from Asia, where the eels are raised for food. This year's season was canceled outright. The top DFO enforcement official in the Maritimes says the department is examining an electronic monitoring system similar to the one deployed in Maine. In that state, fishermen and dealers log catches using fobs and QR codes.
What we're talking about is making sure that we know that anybody who is in possession of Elver, we know where that Elver has been harvested, that they have the authorization from the department to be in possession and to have harvested that Elver. And then when that Elver is sold to, a buyer or a holding facility, that Elver that arrives at that holding facility, the person there who's in charge of that Elver can prove that it was harvested in an authorized fashion. And then when it's ultimately exported, again, the people that are buying the Elver and exporting it have the authorization available from the department.
The traceability measure is one that's been long called for by the commercial Elver industry, which has criticized DFO for dragging its feet.
Officials with Fisheries and Oceans Canada in southwest Nova Scotia say they don't know how much lobster is being landed outside of the commercial fishing season in St. Mary's Bay. That admission came during a meeting yesterday of the Advisory Committee for Lobster Fishing Area 34, the lucrative fishing grounds from Digby to Bacquarel Point. Meeting attendees are concerned about the impact of the food, social, and ceremonial fishery conducted by Sabaganagadi First Nation outside the commercial season in St. Mary's Bay. The president of the Unified Fisheries Conservation Alliance says the revelation from DFO confirms industry suspicions.
Not only do they have no idea how many lobsters are being harvested by FSC fisheries within St. Mary's Bay, but they also don't have any mechanism to even be recording it and assessing it.
A statement from Sabaganagadi Chief and Council says they have their own concerns with DFO, including people being harassed while exercising treaty rights to fish.
There are renewed demands for change within Canada's military after the release of a long-awaited report. It focuses on female soldiers and veterans and shows gaps in care and attention, both while they served and in retirement. Livia Stefanovich now with the renewed push to treat those women with the respect they've earned.
When women joined the force, sisters in arms, in a long battle just to be seen.
The playing field was never even for us. The health care, the uniforms, just about every aspect of service.
In the first modern study of its kind, a parliamentary committee looked at the challenges women face during and after service.
The Canadian Armed Forces must now take the initiative in these transformations.
Despite some progress, the report concludes female veterans remain largely invisible, and their specific needs are often neglected by Canadian Armed Forces and Veteran Affairs.
Many veteran women testified that when they wear their medals on Remembrance Day, they're often asked if it's their father's medals, their husband's medals, or even their son's medals.
The committee identifies gaps in medical services and equipment not suited for women.
It's really unfortunate it's taking this long. Women have been allowed in the military since the late 80s, and we're only now starting to realize that, our bodies are different.
The department really has to look at the services, the benefits, and also the entitlement guidelines.
The federal government says it will respond to all 42 recommendations geared to recognize women in the military and RCMP and how to improve their working conditions.
We have to make sure that women veterans have access to the services that they need based on the injuries that they have.
The report also goes into detail about allegations of sexual misconduct, pointing out women are more than 2.5 times more likely than their male peers to be survivors.
It is quite terrifying how many of them did experience sexual misconduct.
It's important if the people of Canada are going to see us, our government needs to see us first, I think, and acknowledging what so many women have faced and continue to face. Personally, to me, it would be very meaningful.
Even though the federal government and the Canadian Armed Forces made an official apology about military sexual misconduct back in 2021, the Veterans Affairs Committee is now calling for another one, much broader, one that focuses on the fact that the government and the military fostered a culture of sexual trauma for decades. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
There was an emotional ceremony in Glace Bay earlier this week to honor a fallen Cape Breton soldier. The crew of HMCS Glace Bay have named their ship's mess in honor of the late Sergeant James McNeil, a ship named for his hometown. CBC's Kyle Moore has that story.
When you enter Jimmy McNeil's home, it's easy to see the love he has for his son. Sergeant James McNeil was only 28 years old when he was killed in Afghanistan by an explosive device.
14 years, June 21st day. Yeah. And I go to the graveyard every day, in the morning and in the evening. I just can't help it. I just have to be with him, eh?
McNeil is well known around town because of the tragedy and his vehicle. The hood of his car displays a large picture of the fallen soldier. He says it's so his son is with him everywhere he goes.
That's the fifth car I had it on, really. And people see me, they salute me, they wave, and one fella even stopped in the middle of the road and bless him stuff and start praying.
The car has also created a connection between McNeil and the crew of the Royal Canadian Navy ship HMCS Glace Bay during a visit last year.
We were able to send our crew down to participate in the Remembrance Day ceremony. And it was great because one of the things we like to do here is maintain that connection with our namesake city. And while we were there, we happened to notice a vehicle with a homage to a fallen soldier.
After connecting with family, the crew wanted to honor McNeil's memory, and they did during a recent ceremony by renaming the chief and petty officers' mess aboard HMCS Glace Bay. The mess is a place on the ship to get away from day-to-day activities, to relax and spend time with peers.
We've got a small plaque right now that just says the room is dedicated to Sergeant James McNeil and has a photo of him. Now that the ceremony is complete, when we get back to Halifax, we're going to have our formation imaging service create a plaque for us that's going to capture not just the memory of Sergeant McNeil, but the story of us renaming the mess.
Members of McNeil's family recently boarded the ship to see the area named after McNeil. His father says the honor brings a lot of pride.
It means the world to me, I'm telling you. It's unreal. Yeah, I love everything what they do for him, eh?
McNeil says the loss of his son never gets easier, but says the family has received an incredible amount of support since his death. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Glace Bay.
People who live near the former Bangor Mill Museum in Clare that was recently destroyed by fire say they hope to rebuild as soon as possible. The fire at the site started at 4 in the morning last Saturday.
It left the 95-year-old sawmill in ashes. As Preston Mulligan learned, Bangor Development Commission took its first step this afternoon toward the rebuild.
Firefighters have told Denise Comeau des Hotels nothing about their investigation or the origins of the fire, but to her, something seems off.
The fire started at 4 o'clock in the morning in the mill section, and there's no electricity or heat in that section of the mill.
While investigators work on what happened, Comeau des Hotels and her team took a small step this afternoon toward the rebuild. They opened a bank account to start collecting the hundreds of thousands of dollars they'll need for the project.
We're looking at our bank to see if there's a way that we can have people donate money, that the money would go directly into a bank account to rebuild. And we're going to look at other ways of getting funds. And we're not stopping there. Like I said, they destroyed the mill, the museum, but they didn't destroy the history.
Chair Senator et Sénatrice.
Today in Ottawa, a senator from Nova Scotia rose in the Red Chamber to remind Canadians of what was lost and what that community now needs.
The mill and its museum served as an interpretive center where locals, tourists, and school groups came to immerse themselves in its history.
The original sawmill was built in 1877. It burnt twice in the 1920s. The one destroyed on Saturday was built in 1929. Comeau des Hotels says groups from all over the country are offering to help. She says she'll take it.
We're going to need expert advice of how to go and get grants, how to go and get funding, because that's the way we're going to be able to rebuild it.
Comeau des Hotels grew up with a view of the mill from her living room window. She says that's the image she has in mind as work to replace it begins. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Halifax.
Oh, the Acadians, certainly determined people. They'll get that thing rebuilt.
No, they definitely will.
Landmark for sure. First quick break on the way. Do stay with us.
Yes, we have a lot more to come on CBC Nova Scotia News. Canada opens the G7 summit by promising billions of dollars for Ukraine from frozen Russian assets.
And New Brunswick and other provinces will begin tracking the deaths of people who die while experiencing homelessness.
And we have Tina back next with the full forecast. We will see you on the other side of the break.
So a few pop-up showers here and there around the province today, but boy, pretty nice day.
I know, and looking ahead to Father's Day, skip
Right?
over some of the other wet
Some of the weather that we
Yeah.
might have in between now and then. And Father's Day is still looking pretty good. In fact, we do have a front coming through. It's going to take the temperatures down. It's going to also take the humidity down a little bit. So it's going to be quite comfortable for Father's Day.
There you go.
Nice.
I keep advocating we should switch, right? Mother's Day should be in June and Father's Day.
Chances of getting the better weather this
would be
time of
better.
year, that's for
Right?
sure.
I guess ladies first,
Yeah.
but all in all, it would
Sunday's
be better.
good for barbecuing.
There
Yeah,
you
that's
go.
right.
There you go. Our temperatures right now are very warm. warm inland, a little bit cooler along the coast, courtesy of the southwesterly winds. I don't know if you were out and about and noticed that this afternoon. They are starting to pick up, and that's going to be the case today, tonight, especially through the day tomorrow, ahead of a front that will be working its way through New Brunswick during the day on Friday and pushing into Nova Scotia on Saturday. And that will bring us scattered showers, even risks of thunderstorms, but it's also eventually going to bring us some cooler air. So as we go through the next 24 hours, we're going to watch a couple of things going on right now. The last several hours, we have been seeing some scattered showers developing, especially through, say, the mainland, stretching through the Annapolis Valley, in through the eastern parts of the mainland. Nothing like we saw yesterday. We saw some pretty impressive thunderstorms rumbling around. These look like they just put down some soakers from time to time. And now that the sun is already starting to set, these scattered showers are becoming less and less as time goes on. So they're really losing the daytime heating and just a few sprinkles here and there. So the sky should start clearing for Nova Scotia, and even including Cape Breton, part of Nova Scotia, but Cape Breton's been under the cloud cover for the better part of the day in some areas, and certainly some fog patches. So most of the skies are starting to settle out. It's this back to the north and west. This is the cold front. It's going to start pushing into New Brunswick tomorrow, and it's really going to start affecting our weather during the day on Saturday, late in the afternoon, and especially Saturday night into Sunday. So it's a very slow-moving system. Speaking of slow-moving systems, we've got areas of low pressure to our north. It's the one over Labrador City that has the trailing cold front that will be pushing through our area. And if you have friends or family in South Florida, a tropical disturbance down there is producing lots and lots of rain for them. We don't have lots and lots of rain in the forecast, although we'll keep a few showers in the eastern mainland forecast for this evening. And then skies becoming partly cloudy overnight and staying very mild into the double digits. There will be some patchy fog developing overnight and into the early morning hours tomorrow morning, but then our sky should start clearing, and then we'll see an increase in the cloud cover once again tomorrow afternoon and especially tomorrow evening. Check it out. Over the next 24 hours, things should be fairly quiet during the day tomorrow, and then the front starts pushing its way through New Brunswick slowly but surely. The rain chances really hold off until late tomorrow night and into Saturday, and that's when we'll see the front starting to push its way into PEI, northern Nova Scotia, and stretching back along the Fundy Coast, and then eventually pushing through the province as we go Saturday night into Sunday. Not to mention there's another area of low pressure that will be coming off the Atlantic, and that will ride along that boundary, bringing better chances for rain along the Atlantic coast Saturday night into Sunday, and then clearing out just in time for Father's Day by early Sunday morning. Until then, tomorrow it's going to be another hot one inland. We'll find some relief along areas of the coast where the temperatures will hold in the upper teens to lower 20s, with maybe even some fog patches sticking around into the afternoon hours. But all in all, it's going to feel very much like summer, with a couple of exceptions for tomorrow. The winds, they're going to be picking up out of the southwest, 20 at times, gusting up to 40 kilometers per hour. And we could even see some higher wind gusts, especially along areas of the coast. So for tomorrow, again, highs in the mid-20s, cooler along areas of the coast. We do have rain in the forecast primarily tomorrow evening and into the overnight hours, and then the showers will be ending during the day on Saturday, but more so Saturday night into Sunday, and then clearing out just in time for Father's Day. Now, a little bit of a step back temperature-wise over the weekend, with temperatures going back down into the lower 20s, but look what happens next week. We're back into the mid to upper 20s for daytime highs, and then, of course, we have to introduce some scattered showers coming back next weekend.
Those are some big numbers on the temperature board, though, for sure.
Absolutely. We have some chances of hitting 30 degrees on those days.
Okay, bring it on. Thanks so much, Tina.
Thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Tourism Gaspésie. Plan your stay in Gaspésie at tourismgaspésie.com and enjoy extraordinary moments.
Up next, I'll talk with Joanne Roberts, an author and former interim leader of the Green Party of Canada, about Premier Houston's change of heart over fixed election dates. That's our Newsmaker interview.
Please stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
Premier Tim Houston says he is no longer committed to the fixed election date of July 15th, 2025 that he has long promised. He says, quote, the election will be when the election is. Joanne Roberts is a former interim leader of the Green Party of Canada and an author who is writing a book, in part at least, about fixed election dates. Ms. Roberts, what was your reaction when Premier Houston really stepped away from his promise of a fixed election date in this province?
Well, I wish I could say I was shocked, but I'm not. He joins a collection of premiers and prime ministers across the country who get all excited, bring in fixed election dates, and then promptly ignore them. Stephen Harper introduced federal legislation in 2007 saying fixed election dates would make elections fair in Canada. It was time. And in 2008, he called an election and ignored his own legislation. And, you know, here in the Maritimes, we've seen Premier Higgs in New Brunswick. He called a pandemic election in 2020 to get a majority. And Dennis King in 2023, he only had 6 months to go to his fixed election date. Called an election right after the high of the Canada Games, which they did very well in PEI. He got a majority, no more having to mess with those minority governments. And I think this is what I'm hearing from Tim Houston, is he came in, his first act, his first legislation was to bring in a fixed election date. We were the only province in the country that didn't have one. And I didn't like the date he picked, and I must admit I opposed that. But he went ahead and set the 15th of July. And now he's going, well, maybe I won't stick to it.
It begs the question, why bother floating this idea, or it's more than floating it, it's actually making it the law, have this fixed date at all?
Well, that's the question. If they're just going to be glorified guidelines and kind of lull us into thinking we know when the next election is, then we shouldn't have them. I mean, quite honestly, and I actually like fixed election dates, but I think they have to come with some criteria. You can't just blow them off whenever it suits you. And that's what they do. They blow them off when they think they can win.
Okay, and the opposition, yourself included, you didn't like the idea of a summer fixed date, but as you say, still like the idea of them being fixed. So, you know, why do you like it as a fixed date other than sometime in the summertime?
Okay, well, I like fixed dates because it makes elections fair. It really does. It levels the playing field to a certain extent. It also means there's more engagement. And I mean engagement by a variety of people who can run for office. Not everyone can suddenly decide with 30 days notice that they can run for office. So very few women can do that. Very few people who come from marginalized communities can do that. So you have more time to recruit diverse candidates if you know when the election's going to be. As well, parties can be prepared. And I know everyone says, oh, well, then they're just going to be in election mode for months and months in advance of election. Well, who are we kidding? We're doing that anyway. Trouble is, only the governing party seems to have the advantage. It's like if you have a horse race and only one of the jockeys knows when the race is going to start. That's not a fair race. And voters get the message, this is a rigged system.
It seems that opposition parties, all of the parties, would have to kind of be in a ready mode, because if we do have one, if we were to have one this summer or this fall, they've got a lot of getting ready to do, don't they?
Oh my gosh, it's a lot of work to get ready for an election. But you know, it's not just the parties. Elections Nova Scotia has to get ready. Let me give you an example. In New Brunswick, they thought they were going to a snap election in the fall. I mean, the premier was making all the right noises, said he was frustrated with his own cabinet. So Elections New Brunswick started to get ready for an election. And they spent $1.7 million getting ready for an election that in the end, the premier decided not to call. I mean, that's the kind of thing we need to be talking about, because if we're wondering why voters get cynical about politicians and elections and why they throw up their hands and say, I'm just not going to vote, that's part of it. You know, they see us making things work to keep people in power.
Okay, just quickly, you alluded to this earlier with you can't just use it as guidelines, you can't just throw it out whenever you want to. Is there a better way to manage the call of an election using a fixed date?
I think if you put into your legislation some kind of a benchmark, for example, if you said that we can go to the polls if 2/3 of the legislature agrees. So it's not just well, you could also have in place that if we lose confidence of the House, I don't think we'd ever change that. But if Premier Houston decided he wanted to go this summer, he has to take it to the legislature and get a vote of 2/3 of the members. If he had to do that, and there was an issue that was big enough that everyone agreed, then great, let's go early. But not this, oh, gee, my poll numbers are good, let's go early.
Well, we'll see how it all unfolds. Joanne Roberts, thanks so much for talking to us.
Great, thanks, Tom.
Coming up, Jagmeet Singh says he is more concerned than ever after reading the unredacted report on foreign interference.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and other G7 leaders meeting in Italy have agreed on a new deal to help Ukraine.
They plan to use billions of dollars in frozen Russian assets to help Kyiv fund its ongoing war with Moscow. Ashley Burke reports.
The message from G7 leaders on day one, everything's falling into place with a deal to help Ukraine in a new way. The Prime Minister promising a multi-billion-dollar loan to help Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's ongoing fight against Russia.
Canada is actually the first country to announce $5 billion of that will be a Canadian contribution.
They will help Ukraine not only on the battlefield, also in reconstruction.
Canada's contribution is part of a bigger $50 billion deal agreed to by all G7 leaders.
Today is a truly historic day.
The U.S.-led plan involves using the interest earned on profits from hundreds of billions of dollars of frozen Russian assets as collateral for a loan that would see countries get their money back.
Put that money to work for Ukraine. Another reminder to Putin, we're not backing down.
Russia's foreign ministry immediately fired back, calling it an illegal initiative and warning retaliatory measures will be inevitable and extremely painful. With Russia making gains on the battlefield, experts say Ukrainian troops need a lot more help, including from Canada.
There's also a big gap between what's been committed and what Ukraine actually needs, which is essentially more of everything.
At a meeting of Ukraine's allies in Belgium, Canada's defense minister announced more than 130,000 rounds of small arms ammunition, a remote weapon system, and motors for attack rockets for Ukraine.
Canada is beginning shipments of a new fleet of 50 armored vehicles to Ukraine.
Canada also announced new sanctions against those supplying key technology to help Russia's military. Pope Francis is expected to join G7 leaders for discussions on the dangers of artificial intelligence on Friday. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Bari, Italy.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he is more concerned than ever about foreign interference after a report last week alleged some MPs helped foreign governments meddle in Canadian elections. Singh has now read the unredacted report, and his impression is very different from that of the leader of the Green Party. Evan Dyer has the latest from Ottawa.
Jagmeet Singh is the second party leader to read the report and share his thoughts on what it says, at least as much as he can, without falling afoul of national security laws.
I am not relieved after reading this report. I am more concerned today than I was yesterday.
Singh's take on the report is very different from that of Elizabeth May.
After having read the report, I am more convinced than ever of the conclusions of the Anti-COP Committee and the report, that some parliamentarians are, in the words of the intelligence services, semi-witting or witting participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics. In short, there are a number of MPs who have knowingly provided help to foreign governments, some to the detriment of Canada and Canadians.
Singh had harsh criticism for PM Trudeau, who he said was sending a message that Canada's willing to tolerate some foreign interference, and even harsher words for Pierre Poilievre for not wanting to learn more about foreign interference in his own party.
He doesn't want to know about very disturbing allegations directly connected to his party that India, among other countries, were involved in foreign interference in leadership races.
And we have one leader who either can't get security clearance or refuses to get security clearance. He has not explained to Canadians why he cannot get security clearance. What kind of leader is refusing to understand the threats to our country?
Madam Speaker, I would call him the member for Timmins James Bay, but I'm not sure he's ever actually been to Timmins, actually. He doesn't live in the riding.
While Poilievre offered no rationale for his refusal to get clearance, the Conservatives' foreign affairs critic said other parties are wrong to say Poilievre could use the knowledge to expel compromised candidates.
In the Conservative caucus, a decision to expel is based on a secret ballot vote of the majority of members of Parliament in that caucus.
Of course, it wouldn't be necessary to expel a member to keep him or her from running. All that would be required would be a refusal to sign nomination papers.
And I do not buy his phony excuses.
But Conservatives say it's up to the PM and not their party to take action.
This is the responsibility of the Prime Minister. He has the authority to do it. He did it last September when he released highly classified information concerning the killing of a Canadian citizen, Mr. Nidger, in the Lower Mainland of Vancouver. He did that on the floor of the House of Commons. He should do it again.
Chong agrees with Singh's reading of the report rather than Elizabeth May's more optimistic interpretation. He says even the unredacted version makes it clear that MPs have cooperated with foreign governments, including those of India and China. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The U.S. Supreme Court has dismissed a case that sought to limit the availability of a commonly used abortion pill, mifepristone. In a unanimous decision, justices ruled the group that brought the suit does not have the legal standing to do so. A group of doctors had been challenging the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's decision to make the pill easier to get. The pill is the most used abortion medication in the U.S. The court's decision means access to the pill remains unchanged.
A new national process could provide some vital information for those on the front lines dealing with homelessness. It offers a standardized way to track deaths among people who are living on the streets. This is data that most jurisdictions in Canada don't collect. Carissa Donkin reports.
They were someone's mother, father, son, and daughters. It's hard to see them looking at us as nothing.
Sabrina Robichaud rides her bike to a mural in downtown Moncton every day. She made the mural to remember people who've died on the streets, many of whom were her friends. Robichaud doesn't have a home herself, but she still finds a way to record the names and track down photos from when they were alive. She keeps a list of everyone who's died on the streets over the last few years and says that list now includes more than 200 names of Moncton's precariously housed.
So we don't actually know exactly how many people have died while experiencing homelessness here in New Brunswick. The province just doesn't track that information, and most Canadian jurisdictions actually don't, with a couple of exceptions. But that could soon change. And that's because the Public Health Agency of Canada and Statistics Canada have come up with a new method of tracking residence type when someone dies. And coroners and medical examiners across the country could start tracking this information as soon as this summer, which is welcome news to Naomi Nichols, a researcher who's been trying to track this information in Peterborough, Ontario.
Having a better sense of the actual numbers of people who are losing their lives while they're homeless, even if homelessness is not the direct cause, but it has exacerbated their underlying health conditions, for example, I think is really important in terms of an evidence-led advocacy strategy.
Back at the mural in downtown Moncton, Robichaud says she sees struggle, love, and caring when she looks at the faces of the friends who she's lost.
I wish half of them knew how much they were loved and cared and how much they meant to people. A lot of us, we don't think we matter to a lot of people because most of our families and stuff pushed us away because of our addictions or our mental health or our struggles.
Carissa Donkin, CBC News, Moncton.
Canada's main stock index posted a loss today, while U.S. markets were mixed. Here's a look at how the markets did do today. Well, saw a few convertibles on the go
Oh,
today,
did you?
and you can't blame them for wanting to drive around those.
And shorts and flip-flops.
I know.
And, yeah.
It seems like we just slipped into summer over the last week or so,
Yeah,
and we've
feeling
been
good.
kind of waiting for it to happen. We have a little bit of a setback as far as the temperatures are concerned this weekend. We need a little bit of rain, possibly bank some of that
That's
rain.
true.
Yep.
And we do have some chances for showers this evening, but that's primarily through the Annapolis Valley and through the eastern parts of mainland, where we have seen a few sprinkles pop up in the last couple of hours. Now that the sun is setting, these showers are starting to fizzle away, and that trend will continue through the overnight hours. And then we'll be left with partly cloudy skies tonight and some fog patches developing. So tomorrow we'll start off with some morning fog. In the summertime temperatures, the convertibles are going to be out again tomorrow.
I bet.
A little bit breezier though tomorrow. The winds out of the southwest, 20 at times gusting up to 40 kilometers per hour. And there will be some higher wind gusts, especially where the southwesterly winds blow directly on shore. But Sydney getting up to 23, 26 for Truro, as well as Halifax. And Yarmouth should see highs of around 25, cooler along areas of the coast. But here's the thing that's going to change it all for us as we head into the weekend. It will be slow to arrive. It's a front, and it will slowly start pushing its way into the region by Friday night into Saturday. So Friday night will hold on to a chance of some showers, with better chances for showers during the day on Saturday. But that chance for showers will really start varying depending on where you are in the province. Through northern Nova Scotia in the morning, and then later in the afternoon for, say, Halifax, combining with another area of low pressure that could bring some soaking rains, especially to the eastern mainland, right on through to Cape Breton. Temperatures will be slightly cooler as we head towards the weekend, but clearing up just in time for Father's Day and warming up next week.
Looking pretty good. Okay, well, if you like pandas, and it would seem on this show we do, because we feature them pretty prominently, you definitely like this news from China. Forestry officials there say the number of giant pandas in the world has grown. There are now nearly 1,900 of the animals living free. The data also shows the numbers of captive pandas around the world has reached 728.
They also found that the genetic diversity of captive bears has improved. It means they have healthy, dynamic, and sustainable population. China has established joint programs on giant panda conservation in 17 countries.
We'll leave you with that little bit of good news. That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Bye.